Hello, everybody. We have a quick one today to go through. We're going to talk a bit about personality styles and clarify some things. I'll tell you a quick story of why I want to talk about this today. I had a topic and article, uh, published in a major online magazine and portal, and it was about love and romance and film analysis and using that to look at romance. But I noticed that as they made it what they call an essential read, there were one or two others in that same category in relationships, love, marriage, dating, and mating, etc. And one I noticed is worth talking about because it's actually full of errors, and I thought I might help you understand the relationship of personality and romance and how that works. And nothing against the author of this, but there's a lot that's erroneous in it. A lot of it is copied from the researcher Helen Fisher, which apparently has passed on. I wasn't aware of that. I used to debate her in the media, an anthropologist as opposed to a psychologist or psychiatrist. But anyway, the title of this article I want to discuss is "The Four Love Archetypes of Romantic Compatibility," which some of you who followed me for a long time know that I've thoroughly addressed about 30 years ago with a model of personality that I called KWML. And I've since changed the name because KWML, based on King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover, which are Jungian archetypes for males, obviously wouldn't apply directly to females. And the Jungian authors, Moore and Gillette, wrote a book on this, and it was a great book designed to help males grow in their lives and their sense of purpose and identity. So the names are great. I think they're very descriptive, and that's why I used them. But created a lot of confusion about how does this apply to females and how does it apply to compatibility, certainly in romance, because that book was not written for that purpose. So I changed the name to the social personality types and the social personality system, and that is trademarked. And the reason for that is because rather than looking at personality just in isolation in an individual, I wanted to look at how does personality interact with others, and how many types are there. That's another matter for debate and discussion. The idea of personality typing, anybody could create a personality typing system in this easy way. You would select a finite number of categories. It could be 4, 6, 12, 256, whatever you want, so long as those various types address the core components of personality, which this article does not. The Four Love Archetypes of Romantic Compatibility is the title. Um, and if you're going to make your own, uh, unlimited number of types that you could create. However, you would have to distribute them over a spectrum of human behavior, and specifically, personality is style. It begins with what we would call temperament, and that is the only thing that is inborn. It's the only thing that you could say is biological or heritable would be our temperament. But then what we're born with, we develop as we go through life into personality. And so that means it's both nature and nurture to a degree, although temperament strongly governs what the limits are of what you can eventually grow in your personality. So it's not as simple as just pure biology. And a lot of times, non biologists will tend to want to overreach into the area of biology, which they're not trained at formally or have not operated as. And I see this happening with this thing from Helen Fisher. The I don't know if it's the color wheel or basically, she uses four types: explorer, builder, director, and negotiator. So you could do the same thing. You could call it bricklayer, construction worker. You could use the village people, actually. You could use the characters of Sex and the City, the four females, or you could use the four male characters of the TV show Entourage. Four is good because it's Cartesian in nature. You know, it's like the world of humans is Cartesian, right? We have maps that are 2D, and they're laid out, and there's a north, south, the east, and west. So Cartesian coordinates are a great way to go if you designed your own personality typing system. But the key is, what is the latitude and longitude of your map? What exactly are you going to define those as? And unfortunately, this article and the study of whatever this is called, explorer, builder, director, negotiator, tries to link itself to brain chemistry, which is erroneous. If you are a biologist, it'd be the same as if you were talking about hardware versus software, and personality is mainly what you could call firmware. So it's not exactly hardware, and it's not programmable software that's up to randomness for you to create out of nothing. Like you could just turn yourself into a Hollywood star if you want. It's not that malleable. So I use the term firmware to use an analogy from computers, and firmware has roots that are durable and permanent and lasting, right? Your computer comes with it already installed. Just like you could say we come already installed with instincts, for example, like the patellar reflex or the startle reflex. Loud noise makes you jump, no matter who you are. And that's not the same as talking about brain chemistry. Brain chemistry doesn't make you jump. Literally, it's way too simplistic and it's misleading to you, to put it that way. So, firmware would be like something lasting, like the name firm implies lasting, durable, and pre installed. And yet, it's not the same as hardware and it's not the same as fully programmable software. So, your personality is like that, or your temperament is like that. And then you grow a personality on top of that temperament. So, in my original system, where I originally borrowed the names King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover, and it had to apply to both males and females, right? So, I liked the descriptiveness of these medieval roles, if you will. They're not roles, they're firmware, temperament. So I added queen to king, so there could be a queen or a king, depending on biologic sex. And I don't view biologic sex as having bearing on personality. Why? Especially in the arena of romantic connection, for the reason that, just like in this article, which tries to link Helen Fisher's four types, which are akin to my four types that long predate hers, um, called Explorer, Builder, Director, and Negotiator. So those familiar with my work will recognize Explorer as a magician. In my terminology, somebody with a strong right brain predilection and outgoing, Jung would have said extroverted style, but I say they're dominated by confidence as their type of self esteem, which is separate from gender and separate from biologic sex. So, a confident right brain person in the social personality system I devised is a magician. That's probably akin to Helen Fisher's explorer, because that's a person who's daring and willing to be outgoing and go be an adventurer and be physical, get physical. A builder is akin to my terminology, the warrior. Why? Because a builder is hands-on, and yet a builder is structured. So that's probably referring to a warrior in my system. And a warrior, as those of you who follow me know, is somebody who is left-brained, analytical, and structured, but much like the magician is outgoing and confident in their self-esteem style. So a builder is a warrior. A director is somebody who doesn't do the actions. They don't do the acting. They direct the play. They direct the film. They direct the project, but they don't do the work. They just direct. That's a king or a queen. Why? Because they're more passive emotionally in terms of being full of well-being. So a good person, a caring person who is a king or a queen, aka director in their system, is somebody who cares a lot, but guides others, and the others do the work. So the magicians and the warriors do the work. They're full of confidence and they're action taking. They go out into the world and take action. Whereas a director is more passive physically, yet caring, full of well being as their self esteem type. And so they care for their people, they care for the workers who work with them and for them. Director. And then finally, negotiator is obviously the empathic person, therefore right-brained person who is also full of well-being. In my system, that's called a lover. So king or queen, warrior, magician, and lover equal director, um, builder, explorer, and negotiator. Negotiator is a lover in my system. Um, what this article like is very erroneous about and lacks the same as Helen Fisher's system. The four love archetypes of romantic compatibility, it's called, is that by using these exact same four divisions, the way I said at the beginning, you could devise your own personality styling system simply by having a spectrum of human behavior and distributing your names across that spectrum so that you represent all general categories of human behavior. Then you have everything covered in behavior. But what are the behaviors? What are the exact features of personality? And why do I say that gender and biologic sex are not part of them? It's that if you, much like this article suggests, or they suggest that it's pure biology, explorer driven by dopamine. Okay, well, yes, I can see a magician or explorer um, liking novelty. They're an adventurer, right? So they're seeking novelty. Dopamine is the hit. It's the high, the reward of novelty and adventure. So okay, they're attaching this biologic terminology to what amounts to firmware, not hardware. The error here is similar to you building a computer. Like, say you're Steve Jobs and you build an Apple computer, or you're Bill Gates and you build a PC. It's like saying that the quality of the electricity in your house is the computer. It's completely erroneous. Instead of addressing the circuitry, that which some of which is heritable from your forebears, which is your temperament, but you grow that temperament into something within a certain limited range. That would be Steve Jobs building the actual computer. Whereas this is trying to say the amount of electricity in your house is your computer. It's like describing the power source as if it's some kind of sophisticated computer hardware. It's like trying to build a house with just a sledgehammer to say that dopamine explains an explorer, or in my parlance, a magician. Very erroneous. Tempting because it's simplistic, but it's not elegant because it's erroneous, if you catch my meaning. So they use in this article explorer driven by dopamine, builder driven by serotonin. And that's an interesting terminology to use, or analogy to use, but it's only an analogy. It's not causal um, in terms of personality. Serotonin, just like dopamine, any of us could do something adventurous and feel, dopamine, feel excited to do something adventurous, something new. It doesn't matter what our personality style is, you see. Just like any of us could plug into the electricity and run whatever it is we're running. The electricity doesn't give the quality of the device that we want to run on it. And it doesn't do the exact tasks that the device is needed to do, like a blender or a ninja device or a coffee maker or something. The coffee maker is not defined by, yes, I have electricity in the house. That's what dopamine and serotonin are for. They're mediators of something that ends up being very complex, somewhat biologically based in temperament, but extremely psychologically, which is software, not hardware, and not the power source. These are power sources. So builder is warrior, actually. So right, already even the analogy is erroneous there, because a builder in my system would be a warrior, and serotonin is not the dominant neuro, neurotransmitter involved. It would actually be vasopressin as a hormone, not which is not, well, it's a hormone. So the author here mixes hormones and neurotransmitters as if they're the same thing. Um, Serotonin would be most analogous to a warm, fuzzy hug from mom in terms of mood. So it would be partially analogous to the self-esteem type called well-being. But well-being is, while it's both it's an energy, but it's a configuration of that energy in um, a psychologic software, if you will. It's a way of the energy being organized. So it's serotonin, might be partially responsible for what we call well-being. Let's put it that way. Then the author goes on to director, which in my system would be a king or a queen, and so the director and builder are flip flopped here. So director driven by testosterone. Well, that right there, I wouldn't want you to take that to heart, because it would imply that all males are this personality style, director, because testosterone is assigned to it. And males have a higher general level of testosterone than women do. So it would mean all males are directors, which can't possibly be true, or it obviates even the need for a personality typing system, because you already know every single male is a director in the system if testosterone is involved. The more correct term to use as a mediator would be vasopressin, not testosterone. Vasopressin is a hormone. Um, it has ties to testosterone and to regulating blood pressure. So you may find that interesting, but and it's a masculine influenced analog of oxytocin, and you've all heard of oxytocin. Which brings us to their final category, negotiator, which in my system is a lover. And a lover is in my system, a right brain person full of well-being, nurturing, a nurturing person, therefore an empathic person, which is what they're implying by a negotiator, somebody who empathically tries to link people together, join people together. So they're a right brain person, like a talker, a people person. They're philosophical, they're poetic, and they're kind. So thus, negotiator. But then they say driven by estrogen, which is completely erroneous, because it would mean no male can be a kind, loving, empathic joiner of people together, a negotiator. Only females could be that, if that were true, if it's driven by estrogen. So this article is just so far reaching and erroneous scientifically, I just can't stand it. So I thought I would talk to you about that. and get some discussion going. The closest thing that I think they would be reaching for in, is there one singular, first off, these are complex systems. There's no one neurotransmitter solely responsible for a complex outer behavior called personality. But they use the word estrogen. I think what they ought to be reaching for instead is oxytocin, which is very influenced by estrogen, um, in some pathways we could discuss. But again, that's like us discussing the circuitry of the, not the circuitry, the power sources of electricity in your house in trying to fix your appliance. I mean, is it a refrigerator, a coffee maker, or a dishwasher that we're talking about fixing? We're not even addressing that by calling it estrogen. We're saying, hey, let's get into your circuit breakers instead of fixing the device that's broken. Okay, that's my best analogy for now for what's really wrong with this system. Now, let's conclude. Why I'm going on a rant like this, talking about how we shouldn't be talking about testosterone or estrogen when we're talking about personality. Those pertain to gender and biologic sex, and neither of those are involved in personality. Otherwise, all males would be one personality style, and all females would be some other personality style. It eliminates the whole idea of personality to say biologic sex is involved. And it completely obliterates your ability to use personality to understand who's compatible with whom. For people to be compatible with each other romantically, we need to keep out masculinity and femininity and gender and sex so that we can look at the uniqueness of people's two things: our personality, communication style, and behavior style. So, communication and action. Communication can include tendencies and beliefs, and communication includes two things. It includes that which is cognitive, linked to that which is emotional. When we communicate with data, but we use the data with certain voice tone and cadence and implication of our emotional state, and trying to convey an emotional state to another person, or in the area of influence, PR, marketing, and sales and so forth, to induce a certain emotion in others, right? Which we have to watch for not being manipulative with. But nonetheless, communication is both data and emotion. Therefore, personality styles ought to be dual spectra. If you take two spectra, it makes four quadrants. So four types make sense, which is why I developed KWML originally and then rebranded it as the social personality system. So we have a king or a queen, a warrior, a magician, and a lover. And those now make four quadrants where you have a cognitive axis, which is being more left brained and analytical, or more right brained and creative and artistic and imaginative. And then we also have an emotional spectrum. And there's the key. Nobody's been able to figure out, well, what would the emotional spectrum be for how you communicate? What is your style of communication? And so they're resorting to, oh, it must be biological. Let's call it testosterone and estrogen, which means all males would be one type, all females would be one type. Or let's call it serotonin and dopamine. Well, where's norepinephrine, the other major neurotransmitter of mood, or GABA, or 50 others? It's more complex than that. So the easiest way to have there be a simple binary, not binary, but a spectrum with two ends, two limits, that is pure emotional, it would be self-esteem type. And in our parlance and in the research that's come out in the last decade or two, researchers start using the term well-being more and more. So that's one of the two self-esteem types. The other would be confidence. Well-being pertains to being um, against sadness, depression, and anger in its nature. So it might be very loosely analogous to serotonin and maybe dopamine as well. And on the other end, confidence is more anti-anxiety in its nature. So if it had to relate to a neurotransmitter, maybe it would be GABA, um, and glycine, or some other neurotransmitter systems that mediate it. But the mediators are not the thing. And the thing is psychological, not pure biology. Software runs on hardware. Software needs hardware. So we need serotonin, we need dopamine as mediators operating in the hardware. But the hardware itself is a circuitry. It's not the same as the electricity of the house. The house isn't the electrical system. The electrical system is needed in the house to mediate the power, but it isn't the house itself. And they're trying to describe a house as if it was the electricity. Um, so I beat that into the ground. Um, but ending with this, communication is one of the two things personality is that's definitive of personality. The other is behavior, right? So in behavior, we also have a division between up arrow, which I said was well-being, would be a more passive person in terms of action taking, therefore more of a thinker. So Jung would have called it a thinker, and an introvert, both of those. Whereas Jung would have called my confidence the down arrow of the emotional axis in terms of outer behavior. I would call it an action taking person. Jung would call it an extrovert. And maybe some people have called it a doer. Um, Jung maybe tried to call it a judger, a judgmental, but somebody who's action taking. So they have the variables wrong for the emotions. Anyone can get it right by saying there are four types of something that describe humans, and then giving them names, and then having a distribution of behaviors and traits. But you have to get the variables right for what defines personality in the first place. It's communication and behavior, which ought to exclude gender and biologic sex if we want to match people in terms of uh, personality styles so that they're a good fit. In my system, it would be opposites attract. So a king or a queen would most benefit from partnering with a magician. Why? Because they're opposites. So they bring a full complement to the table of human behavior and communication ability, a cognitive and emotional ability. Left brain with right brain person, well being, nurturing person with confident, outgoing person. Just like in the film When Harry Met Sally, when you see these old couples who are opposites of each other saying, we've been together 50 years because I was the doer and she was the guide, and or she was the poet and I was the builder. They're opposites. And then the other set of opposites are lovers and warriors. A lover's a right brain, nurturing person full of well being. A warrior is an outgoing, confident person who's also logical and left brained. So the cognitive axis in my system is left brain versus right brain. But the key that nobody else gets is there needs to be an emotional axis, which isn't dopamine, serotonin, estrogen, and testosterone. Um, Erroneous. You're going to go around thinking every male is a director and every female is a negotiator, when you can have very hard driving, analytical, female kick butt ladies that I would call warrior female, which their system, would say is not possible. Okay, we could talk much more about this on the weekly talk for members, and also in the comments, and on Substack. So thank you for being here. Um, more discussion to come. Thanks.